Yo, people, what's up? This is Malcolm Extreme, the content machine, coming at you with another reaction video from serious history again, when nice people snapped in history. They react to this video, but before we do, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for more notifications from the content machine, Malcolm Extreme. Let's get started.
The edge mentally is not just a modern thing, and here are 3 times it happened in history with some pretty severe consequences.
Probably happened a bunch in history, man. There are habitual line steppers in life that will get on your nerves just enough to make you snap.
It's the year 1300, and a red-haired baby girl is born to a minor noble family in Brittany. Her parents name her Jeanne, and as they lean down to look at their adorable newborn baby, they smile and say, "Jackpot!" You see, Jeanne was a beautiful child, a very valuable asset in those days. So as soon as she was old enough...
Yo, what was everybody back then like super, how you say, fives and fours?
Her parents eagerly married her off to a noble in exchange for a whole lot of land.
Wow, bro.
Jeanne probably had no idea what love was, so she just went along with the plan. And
yo, that had to have been like absolutely traumatizing to children back then, because back then people got married like a lot younger and stuff like that, and daughters were just sent off to other families to get married.
Quickly had 2 kids with this guy.
Wouldn't see me doing that though. Wouldn't see me sending my daughter off like that.
Years later, her husband unexpectedly dies.
Damn.
As a 26-year-old single mother in the Middle Ages, she needs to find someone else to marry to take care of her and her kids.
Dang.
She was still very young, and according to historical accounts, still super hot. So she quickly marries a member of the Breton ruling family.
She was the supermodel of her time, bro.
But his family thinks their guy would be better off marrying someone a little richer, and so they get the Pope to quickly annul their marriage. Jeanne meets and marries another Breton noble.
So I guess hypergamy existed back then too.
Named Jeanne de Clisson. And this time, the vibes are completely different. Against all odds, in a time of marriage between...
Things are working out. Things are working out.
Jeanne and Olivier fall madly in love. They go on to have 5 kids together, and life is perfect.
Wow.
A loving husband, beautiful children, wealth and power.
Yo, and the thing about it back then, like, people can barely like afford like a decent life because people died younger back then too. So it's kind of rough all overall. So when you find like a story like this, it's kind of surprising.
What more could you want? But everything changes in 1341 when
the Fire Nation attacks
without leaving a clear heir. And the family over who gets to be the next duke spirals into a 30-year war called the Breton War of Succession. The kings of England...
I think I actually heard of this.
Rub their hands together.
I haven't heard of this story, but I heard of that war specifically.
Support them in their own 100 Years' War. So the English support John of Montfort, the half-brother of the duke, while the French supported his niece and her husband Charles de Blois.
Dude, back then it must have been like Game of Thrones too, like just the backstabbing, the conniving and shit.
Jeanne and her husband choose to support Charles de Blois and side with the French and their king Philip VI. Fighting for the French, Olivier and his army recapture the lost city of Vannes, but the victory is short-lived and the English quickly take it back. Olivier and other commanders there are captured, and for some reason he's traded back to the French for a suspiciously small amount of money. And this makes the French start to believe he's a traitor.
That's interesting.
And calls a timeout on the war in 1343. And in this
that was red flags overall. Honestly, if he was a traitor, they should have offered up way more money, and then when he actually backstabs them, they would recoup their losses, you know?
Truce, the king invites Olivier and other nobles from Breton to Paris to participate in a tournament to celebrate the newfound peace. Olivier thinks this is awesome and travels to France. But the second he steps on a French soil, he's arrested and taken prisoner. He's tried for treason and thrown into a dungeon to await his trial. Back in Breton, Jeanne finds out about this, rushes to Paris, and desperately tries to get her husband released, even going so far as to bribe the king.
Dang, they were just about to do like peace. They were just in peace talks. What happened?
Sergeant, but ultimately fails. Olivier is given a sham trial, and in August, he's marched out to the town square and publicly beheaded.
Damn, bro.
Hung up in Paris, and his head was shipped off to Brittany to be displayed on a spike.
Honestly, that's probably my my least favorite way to go would be beheading. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of other horrible ways to die.
Horrific for anyone, but for a noble to be treated like this was the ultimate disrespect. In Brittany, Jeanne
disrespectful.
Sons to look at their father's severed head. She forces them to stare at their father's pale.
Look at what they did.
Now weeks old.
Look at what they did.
In a swarm of flies.
They plot their vengeance.
She boils with rage.
Damn,
and refuses
bro.
to let her children look away. They must understand that the king must pay. And so, at the age of 43, Jeanne decides to dedicate the rest of her life to making the rest of King Philip's life a living
That's all it takes is one bad day.
hell.
As the Joker would say.
She flies to France and sells off her entire estate. Land, jewelry, anything and everything she owned of value, and uses the cash to raise a small personal
Wow,
She
bro.
arrives at Chateau
This lady was on a
Castle
mission,
controlled by
bro.
French loyalist.
An absolute
She's
mission.
loudly at the castle gates, asking for the men to allow a heartbroken widow entry. The commander of the castle looks down and recognizes her as a noble who supports Charles de Blois and opens the gates. Once the gates are open, Jeanne's army reveal themselves
Like, attack!
and storm into the castle. The castle garrison is caught off guard, and Jeanne orders her men to massacre them all.
Damn, bro.
She spares just one man and gives him instructions to give King Philip the regards of Jeanne de Clisson. She continued to sack castles along the Normandy coast with her personal
This is next
army, and
level.
eventually, she buys 3 warships, which she paints black and dyes their sails blood red. She names her flagship My Revenge, and essentially becomes a pirate. She carries with her a
Yo, she's straight out of a movie, bro. She's straight out of a movie.
Her tactics are brutal, as she's not so interested in looting. Her only goal is revenge on the French. The crew of every ship she targets is slaughtered, and she personally beheads every French nobleman she finds with her axe. Only one witness on each ship is left alive to tell the story of what had happened.
Damn, dude. That must have been like a lottery back then. To be ransacked by an entire army and just be the messenger at the end.
As word of Jeanne and her Black Fleet gets back to the king, she becomes known as the Lioness of Brittany. Word of this crazy redhead with these black ships that's f***ing up French merchant ships somehow gets back to the English, and they immediately recognize her as a valuable ally and begin funding her to keep up the good work. But
She becomes like a pirate
didn't last
almost.
forever, and in 1348, the French Navy finally tracked down her fleet. In a brutal
Wow.
battle, her fleet is destroyed and her flagship is boarded. But when the soldiers look for Jeanne, she's already long gone. She had escaped in a tiny boat with some members of her crew.
Wow,
No
she
crew
actually
was
got
there,
away.
they floated helplessly for 6 days, and some crew members ultimately did not survive the escape. Finally,
I would
on the
imagine,
7th
man.
day, Jeanne drifted onto English shores, half dead, but still alive enough to ruin King Philip VI's day. Upon landing in England, she was welcomed by King Edward III as a respected ally. With her ships and crew gone, she decided
I wonder if
she
she's
had
gonna
enough
get her
of pirate life.
revenge.
2 years later, her nemesis, King Philip VI, dies anyway, closing that
Dang.
chapter, and she meets and marries an English knight named Walter Bentley.
Dang, she actually got remarried again, man. She went on that rampage and then like ended up surviving and got remarried. It's kind of happy
They
ending.
returned to Brittany together, where she peacefully lived out the rest of her days, dying at the ripe age of 59. Which
Yeah.
these days seems way too young.
Yeah, but back then it was like super old. To die at 59 back then was like you had a full life pretty much. Now it's like what, 90?
But for a mother of 7 in the 1300s who had also been, a freaking pirate, it was a pretty good run.
Yeah,
Number 2, Jirozaemon.
impressive.
The end of the 17th century.
Oh, we're back here in Japan, baby.
Named Jirozaemon from the village of Sano is wandering around the bustling city of Edo. Running a successful business is tough, and Jiro needed some time off to recharge and thought the big city would be the best place to do just that.
Yeah, man.
While walking around,
It was
he
different back
accidentally
then.
stumbles into the pleasure district of Yoshiwara. Whoops, how did that happen? And there, he finds himself surrounded by the most beautiful women who all smile at him as he
Bro,
passes.
I wonder if did the Japanese practice foot binding back then? I think the Chinese, I don't know, did they both practice it? When they like bind women's feet?
By.
Yo, that
Jiro
was
could
a
not help but
messed
stare
up
back in
practice.
awe and waved sheepishly as this was something he was totally not used to. You see, due to a case of smallpox he suffered as a child, his face was badly disfigured, and
Wow.
no woman back home would even look at
The fact that he even survived smallpox as a child is a blessing, bro. You gotta count his blessings,
him or
man.
give him the time of day. As he wanders around Yoshiwara, he
Especially
spots a
back then.
beautiful courtesan in the distance. He rushes over to get a better look, and she's hands down the most stunning woman he has ever seen. He follows her back to her establishment and learns her name is Yatsuhashi. She's an
Yatsuhashi.
oiran, a courtesan of the highest class who only services nobles and the ultra-rich.
Oh wow,
As a
she's
successful
she like a
businessman, he had
concubine, a
money,
prostitute?
But merchants were on the lowest rung of the social ladder. Could he even have a shot to buy some time with this goddess of a woman? But to his surprise, Yatsuhashi smiles and accepts him. Now, it's important
wow.
to note that at this time, the courtesans in this pleasure district had the right to turn away customers they didn't want to service. And so, for the first time in his life, Jiro
so she actually took some time for him.
He instantly falls in love.
Even though it's a concubine.
Nothing matters anymore, and he stays in Edo, spending all of his time with Yatsuhashi. He begins to shower her with the most extravagant gifts. No expense is too much for the love of his life.
Bitcoin.
Sano, without him around, Jiro's charcoal business begins to fall apart. The company soon goes bankrupt, and his home and all of his land are sold off to pay his debts.
Oh wow! This is why you can't get distracted for too long. You gotta stay on your paper game, guys. Don't get distracted by this tail out here.
On Yatsuhashi, Jiro finds himself penniless, but he can't stop wandering around Yoshiwara, obsessively trying to catch his love when she's walking about. One day, Jiro finally manages to catch Yatsuhashi walking in a procession of courtesans, and he calls out to her. She ignores
This is when nice people snap, but if this guy snaps, it's just gonna be when a simp snaps, pretty much.
In that moment, he comes to the painful realization that his relationship with her was strictly
was
business.
fake, bro.
She never had any real.
She was an OnlyFans girl before an OnlyFans girl, man.
I poured my heart out, spent my fortune. I'd heard courtesans were not sincere, but I believed Yatsuhashi.
That wasn't love.
How could I have been so stupid to trust her?
That wasn't love, man.
Unbearable. So on December 19th, 1696, Jiro finds Yatsuhashi again walking through Yoshiwara in a procession, and in a final attempt yells out to her, "Please, could you just say one nice..."
Oh my god, this guy is straight simping, bro.
"Thing to me. I've lost everything because of you." Again, she ignores him and keeps walking. Finally recognizing he's truly lost everything, Jiro finally snaps.
Oh, hell no.
"Dare you ignore me after all this, you ungrateful
wretch." No.
He chases her to a tea house. Yatsuhashi is quickly escorted inside, but Jiro barges his way in and draws a short sword. According to some stories, it's a named blade called the Kagotsurube. "You've humiliated me enough."
Is he like really good at fighting?
Yatsuhashi, who's making her way up a staircase.
Oh my lord.
Charges at the woman he once thought to be the love of his life, and with a single stroke, slices her in half. Her legs and waist tumble down the staircase while her
holy crap, bro.
Jiro runs up the stairs.
This guy crashed out, bro. Crashed out
onto the roof, attempting to escape. The commotion attracts the police, and neighbors try to hit him with long sticks to get him down.
When the simp crashes out.
Madman. Eventually, someone throws a bucket of water on him, which causes him to slip and fall to the ground, where he's quickly captured and later sentenced to death. Number 3, Jeffrey Hudson. It's 1619, and in the small town of...
He wasn't nice, bro. That guy wasn't nice. He was just a simp, bro. He crashed out and died as a simp.
A boy named Jeffrey Hudson's born. While for the most part he looks like a completely normal newborn, his parents soon begin suspecting something is very wrong. Time passes, and he learns to crawl, to walk, and to talk. But he never grows any taller than his birth height. At 3, he's still just 19 inches tall.
Oh, he a short king, bro.
In the 1600s, little people were considered barely above animals, and Jeffrey's father was well.
Yeah, he was probably treated like a
tiny boy running around. He could
Tyrion from Game of Thrones.
In store for him. What would happen to little Jeffrey when he and his wife passed away? Who would take care of him? Luckily,
probably join a circus or something.
Of the baiting bulls for the Duke of Buckingham, Jeffrey's father saw one path that could possibly give his son a somewhat respectable life. So when Jeffrey turns 7, his father brings him to the Duchess of Buckingham and presents.
It's gonna make him a jester.
See, little people, or dwarfs as they were known back then, were often collected by nobility as curiosities. That were
oh my god, no! Don't tell me they collected people like fucking Pokemon, bro. Oh, wait, it was gonna be like a jester or something.
Small, he was perfectly proportionate with no deformities or disabilities.
It was a proportional dwarf.
Just a little person. The Duchess stares at Jeffrey like she's seeing a shiny Pokemon in real life and immediately accepts him, and he joins.
I just said that.
This time, the Duke and Duchess were expecting a visit from the king and his new French bride, Queen Henrietta Marie, and they thought that Jeffrey would be the ultimate surprise and delight for their dinner guests.
Absolutely.
At the banquet, a large pie is placed on the table in front of the royal couple.
You know, I always wish best for people who are put in that situation, man, because, like, honestly, you can't change the way you were born.
The queen stares at the pie, wondering what surprise might be hiding inside, when suddenly,
he pops out.
Jeffrey, dressed in a tiny suit of armor, bursts from the pie crust and starts aggressively dueling an invisible opponent with his tiny sword. The queen finds this hilarious. How is someone this small even real? She must have him.
I wonder how
So the
he's gonna
Duchess
crash
takes
out.
Geoffrey to the Queen, and he travels back with her to London. Geoffrey joins the Queen's collection of oddities and quickly becomes her favorite. She makes sure he has the best food and accommodations. He gets
That's great.
the formal education of a noble.
That's
and
great.
servants that he
But then the Fire Nation attack. I know it's coming. I know it's coming.
can call upon for whatever he needs. Somehow, against all odds, being tiny was not the curse he thought, and miraculously, it's
He was
brought him a
treated like
wonderful
royalty,
He
bro.
develops a deep affection for his queen and works hard to put on the best acts he can for her guests. His hit routine was one where he partnered with one of the Queen's other curiosities, a man named William Evans, who was a giant that stood over 7 feet tall. At dinner parties,
Nice.
Evans would pull out a loaf of bread from
Yeah, they also had people that were super tall back then, man. Like huge, like David and Goliath. This makes me think of like the David and Goliath story was like actually real.
one pocket and then pulled Geoffrey.
Goliath must have been like he must have been like
Geoffrey
7'5" or
was
some
given the
shit.
nickname Lord Minimus, and though he initially enjoyed the spoils of the royal life, he slowly became resentful of the golden cage he had found himself in. He realized that no matter how educated he became or what skills he worked
yeah.
to acquire, he would always be treated like a joke. And
I heard like jesters like back then, like even though he's like more of a entertainer, but he's more like a jester too. Like they were very intelligent people
never truly
because they got to socialize with the
But in
highborns.
1642, Geoffrey found himself with the opportunity of a lifetime to prove he was more than just a court jester.
That's
See,
cool.
while Geoffrey had been busy making nobles laugh, the Queen's husband, King Charles, had been busy alienating the entire parliament of his country. Charles
that's
believed
interesting.
He was God's chosen monarch, and rather predictably, this
He was
monarch
ordained by
badly
God.
received by nearly everyone. And so by 1642, a massive civil war broke out.
Yep.
Supporting the king and his
That was
queen,
bound to
Geoffrey
happen.
fought to take a more active role in the war. He pleaded with the queen for an official position in the royalist army, arguing that he was an expert horseman and a crack shot. The
Nice.
queen eventually gives in and appoints the now 23-year-old Geoffrey to captain of the horse. While many in the court saw this as a joke, Geoffrey didn't care, and he took his new job and new title
That's good.
seriously.
You know, I always appreciate people who have like a status that is deemed lower, but like does their absolute best in that position.
But in 1644, before he had any real shot to prove himself a man beyond his inches, the royalists were clearly losing this war, and the queen flees to her homeland of France,
Yeah.
bringing Geoffrey with her. In France, court life resumes in much the same fashion as before the war, but Geoffrey has no intentions
man.
of returning to the life of an oddity. He was now Captain Geoffrey Hudson. Lord Minimus was gone, and he made it clear to everyone.
So what, did she
he would
lose her
not
army?
tolerate any further mockery. Any man who insulted him would pay with his life.
This is Crash Out. Him pretty much going Breaking Bad.
A man named Charles Crofts thinks that Geoffrey's declaration of dignity is all an act and bursts out laughing.
Oh,
Nobody
no.
knows what Crofts said to
Oh
Geoffrey,
no,
but
he's first on the
and he
list.
challenges Charles to a duel. Still laughing, Charles accepts this challenge from the great
Oh,
Lord
no.
Minimus, thinking this is all a part of a joke that will have a huge punchline in the end. But Geoffrey was not f***ing around at all.
This guy went Napoleon on his
And it would be
ass.
conducted with pistols on horseback. On the day of the duel, when it came time for weapons to be presented, Geoffrey pulls out his tiny custom pistol. Crofts snickers, reaches into his pocket, and dramatically reveals a squirt gun, earning
What?
applause and laughter
Yo, they had those back then? I didn't even know they had those back then.
from the crowd. But Geoffrey was done being laughed at. He tightened his grip on his pistol and orders for Crofts to be handed a real gun. Crofts is quickly outfitted with his own pistol and was like,
He was not
"For
prepared.
real?" The
He's
two
not
men then
prepared.
mounted their horses, ride to a distance, and face each other. The signal is given, and they each charge forward. Crofts fires first, missing Geoffrey's small frame, and with laughter from the crowd echoing in his ears, Geoffrey raises his pistol, aims, and fires. His bullet strikes Crofts in the middle of his forehead and sends him
Damn.
backward off his horse, dead before he could hit the ground.
Damn. Bro.
Funny at all. The crowd is shocked into silence. The Queen's dwarf has just murdered a noble. By this time, dueling was illegal in France, and Geoffrey was quickly arrested and tried for murder.
What?
He was saved at the last possible moment by Queen Henrietta, who negotiated.
Wow, she actually came in clutch for him. I did not expect that, man. But you know what? I think maybe she did love him. Maybe she did love him. Maybe she saw him as like a son, you know?
For him to be exiled instead of executed. And so she and Geoffrey say their final goodbyes, and he sails off from France.
That's actually kind of sad, though. I'm not even gonna lie. That's actually kind of sad.
Jeffrey soon learns just how good life was, being laughed at as one of the Queen's curiosities when he's quickly captured at sea by Barbary pirates.
Damn.
He's sold into slavery and spends the next 25 years as a slave in North Africa.
Damn,
Finally,
20 years a
he
slave.
makes it back to England just in time for a severe anti-Catholic purge and is thrown into prison for 2 years for being Catholic. He eventually is released and dies just a few short years later in 1682.
That's sad, bro.
March grave.
That's absolutely sad. Damn, homie. R.I.P. for the homie.
Now, this is all super depressing and all, but there is a conspiracy theory that this record of being captured by pirates is actually not what happened. See, Jeffrey made a surprise appearance at Queen Henrietta's funeral in 1669, leading some to suspect that the Queen safely hid him away the whole time.
Wow. I don't know. Like, which one is fact? Which one is fiction? Oh, man, that last story was kind of a doubter. Damn, but like, I really think the Queen did like love him, like as a son, bro. I really do. Damn. Like I said, it only takes one bad day. Let me know what you think. Good video, Serious History. Comment, like, subscribe, hit the bell for more notifications from the content machine, Malcolm Extreme. If you like Serious History's channel, if you like his video, check out the link in my basement. Take it easy.